So we have Professor Stephen Furnell, who is the Professor of Cybersecurity in the School of Computer Science at the University of Nottingham. It's a bit of a Nottingham takeover going on here, isn't there?
Yeah, we didn't want to tell you.
A stealth raid. You're going to, well, your title's up on the screen, isn't it? So that's what you're going to be talking about.
Yeah, it helps to remind me. Right, thank you very much. So good afternoon, everybody. Just for my awareness, because I wasn't here earlier, apologies. How many of you in the room are SMEs yourselves? Okay, keep your hands up. How many of you are confident in your cyber security? Okay, good. Not that many hands went down. That's good. Let's see where we go with this then. So, talking about cybersecurity, and it links to, as you might notice from the modestly sized text on the slide, a project that we've got running called CyCOS, which is Cybersecurity Communities of Support for Small and Medium-Sized Enterprises. It's a collaboration between a number of universities, not just Nottingham, funded by UKRI, and part of the Research Institute for Socio-Technical Cybersecurity, or RISCs, a rather apt name in this context. So there's the title again. So a quick outline, I'm going to talk about, preach to the choir a little bit, about why SMEs might need cybersecurity, tell you a bit more about the project itself, and then indicate some of our findings to date in terms of what we've seen in terms of online guidance around cybersecurity for the SME community, what we found talking to SMEs and also talking to some of those who provide security support in that context, and then the notion of our project overall is support for SMEs. Okay, so I said about preaching to the choir. You probably know this bit, that you're a very important part of the UK economy. These figures from the FSB. And given this important contribution, it's sort of vaguely relevant, I guess, to ensure that SMEs are protected against a variety of cyber threats that exist out there on the internet. One thing you may or may not have encountered up to now is something called the Cybersecurity Breaches Survey. This is an annual survey conducted here in the UK, sponsored by DCIT and the Home Office, as you can see on the slide. If you want, you could do that young person thing of scanning the QR code, and it'll take you, hopefully, unless I put some bogus link in there, it'll take you to the survey itself, which has got a lot of relevant information about what UK businesses and charities are doing in terms of cybersecurity and the threats that they found themselves facing and the impacts related to that. A lot of the data in there is particularly split down into businesses by different sizes, and so there's some SME relevant stuff. And one of the things that the survey sort of paints a picture of is that many SMEs, and it does tend to be related to size, so as you go down to the micros, there's less potential for security to have been addressed, not well placed in terms of cyber security and having some sort of in-house expertise and capability to guide them, unless they happen to be an SME specialising in IT and cyber security. They're somewhat better off. Almost two-thirds outsource their security to somebody else, so a managed service provider, for example. But even that requires a knowledge of, well, what am I actually looking for? What security support do I actually need? And how do I judge if this provider is positioned to provide it properly? In other cases, there is some level of in-house knowledge, perhaps not as extensive as maybe it needs to be. And in some cases, there is still a notion of, well, okay, we might recognise it, but we're not able to do anything about it, so hoping that it doesn't hurt us. And in other cases, a feeling of, well, why does cybersecurity matter to us? We're only a small organisation who would want to target us, and perhaps overlooking the nature of some of the ways these threats manifest, because they're not particularly discriminative in that case. So, okay, again, we realise there's different size bands for SMEs, and of course that means we're not talking about the same thing in terms of resources and capabilities. And around that point, and I'm not sure why the line's got a strange break at that stage, scientifically established from looking at the survey results, roughly at that point in the size of the organisation, around 100 employees, there seems to be a tendency to be doing more outsourcing of the security support, so somebody else is hopefully handling it, whereas smaller organisations are maybe seeking support externally occasionally or fending for themselves. And again, that's a variation in terms of what your IT estate, what your data assets, etc., that you're protecting might actually look like. So if we think about a sole trader, well, their IT estate is maybe a couple of devices, a laptop or a PC, a smartphone, that sort of thing, and that's the business in IT terms. Once we get to small businesses, what we need to think about protecting is somewhat more diverse. We've got a greater number of staff, more devices, possibly some issued by the organisation, some personally owned, physical premises to consider the protection of, and a diversity of sectors. So in the sole trader space, it's perhaps more professional sectors. Once we get to small business, a wider variety, of course. And of course, some sectors have a more direct, implicit emphasis on data protection and cyber security than perhaps others. So it's maybe indoctrinated into some people that this is an issue more for them than for, using financial services as an example. So, drawing upon some of the bits from the breaches survey, the most recent one, previous years don't tell a dramatically different picture, I should add, that all of the previous instances of the breaches survey, or at least most of them going back to 2016, are still available if you change the URL and change the year. So, who has a formal policy or policy covering cyber security risks? Well, here it's perhaps even surprising that large organisations, it's not absolutely all of them. There's still a 13% gap there in terms of large businesses having a policy, but we can see that it varies somewhat more as size goes down. A business continuity plan that considers cybersecurity, again, perhaps foundational at the point where you've had some sort of incident and you need to know how you're going to respond and maintain the operation of the business. Now, you might have wondered, well, maybe they don't have it because they've never had the need for it and nothing ever happens to organisations. Well, here we've got the percentage that have been, or experienced a breach or an attack, as the survey terms it, or incident, as we'll use here, in the previous 12 months. And of course, again, the larger organisations, it seems more prominent. Now, there isn't an established reason for that within the survey. It could be because they are a larger target. It could be because they've got more eyes on the issue and can actually notice that things are occurring. And so they've actually got the issue of spotting the incident. But clearly, we can see that smaller organisations are by no means immune to things happening. So that perhaps raises the question of if those small organisations want to seek support in any sort of a way, so whether that's questions, concerns, looking for advice or recommendations, or, as turns out to be the case more often than not when support is sought, they've had an incident, what do they actually do about it and how effective does that prove itself to be? So I say, a lot of them have external providers. We can see here actually that the biggest proportion of using external providers is in the medium organisations, because we reach essentially a tipping point there that as they get larger, they've got more potential to have an in-house IT and security capability, so they're not needed outsourced to the same degree. Anybody familiar with this? The Small Business Guide for Cybersecurity from our National Cybersecurity Centre. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, oh, a few more hands. Okay, I won't wait for it. So, a minority of people are familiar. Now, that's going to bear out something that we see on the next slide. This is one of the various sources that you might find if you look for some cybersecurity advice as a small organisation. And it tells you about 5 key steps that you can do to help protect your business. Okay, these aren't the only security things you can do, but these are 5 fairly useful ones in terms of protecting you against common sorts of threats. Now, I'm not going to run through the details on it. I'm just flagging the existence of this guide. It's freely available from that URL. Sorry, not got a QR code for it this time, but if you do a search for the Small Business Guide, you'll find it. The interesting thing, I think it's interesting, is the awareness of the existence of that guide amongst the target community, and we perhaps saw that with the maybe more limited show of hands in here, isn't that extensive. So this is the guide from our National Technical Authority on Cybersecurity, the NCSC, but many organisations for whom it's targeted don't know that it's there. This is not compliance with it, this is just even knowing of the existence of the guide. And we can see that 2025 was equal lowest so far in terms of the awareness reported. So if an SME's tried to seek cybersecurity support, tried to do something about it, how do they feel afterwards? And more particularly, has cybersecurity been improved as a result? Or are there bumps in the road and hurdles that prevent action being taken? So this is where our project comes in, sort of the premise that there's a lot of attention towards SMEs needing cybersecurity, but less evidence of them actually acting upon it. So full title of the project, I won't read out because it's a mouthful, but you can see it there. It's a 2.5-year project, almost finishing, so we're in the final phases of it. The initial phase was to better understand what the support needs are, and what we're now doing is piloting this community of support approach. This is the full rogues gallery of people involved. Basically, the people on the left talk about it and the people on the right do the work is the general split here. Don't tell the other two people on the left that I said that. We also have a number of, video in this, a number of project partners that are supporting us. I won't, again, name check everybody, but you can see a few relevant names here in terms of the FSB. We've got the Chartered Institute of Information Security, a professional body in the space. IASME, who are the delivery partner for the NCSC for something called Cyber Essentials. Hands up if you've heard of Cyber Essentials. Oh, now that's the best show of hands so far, so that's good. I'll tell IASME and the NCSC you know of it. How many of compliant with Cyber Essentials actually got the badge? That's not bad either. Very good. I don't need to be here. Okay. And cyber resilience centres, who are already there, regionally based, police operated, providing support and advice as well. So this is what we've been doing, collecting evidence leading towards these pilots. I'll move through into that. So in terms of looking at the support that's available already and its utilisation, one of the things that we did was put ourselves in the position of, well, if we were a small organisation looking for cybersecurity advice, perhaps one thing we might do is do an online search, because people do that sort of thing. I mean, they might these days ask ChatGPT. We were doing this a little bit before that, but we did a search for cybersecurity guides, small businesses, or variants of that. And we picked up, it says 30 plus, it was 31, online sources of guidance, all claiming to be cybersecurity guides for SMEs. And what we looked at was, what did they cover? How completely did they cover it? How extensively, perhaps? And how clearly were they presented? Top level findings, because there's lots of it, but it varies quite a lot in terms of its scope and the way that it presents information, perhaps then how actionable it is. So that's I won't keep that on the screen very often, but the sort of questions we were asking under each of those headings. Now on the next slide, I've got a subset of the 31 sources, and they come from different points of origin. So some are from government sources, some are from small business community organisations, some are from retailers, some are from, let's have a look, some are from security vendors rather, IT retailers, internet service providers, insurers, and bodies in the IT space. So this isn't duplicates of the same one, as you can see from the fact the ticks differ. Across the top, we've got, another thing from the NCSC, the 10 steps to cybersecurity as they promote them. And also a column to say, did the source have any coverage of what actual cyber threats were? So what you see here is that there isn't a single source, and this would be the same if we had all 31 of them, that covers something relating to all of the 10 steps plus talking about threats, and there isn't a single issue that is covered by all of the sources. So the coverage is quite variable. So if you were to look at just one, or maybe even two of these sources as an SME and try and understand what does cybersecurity mean for me and what ought I to be doing about it, you're going to get an answer. And here's breakdown slightly differently, different visualization of what topics from the 10 steps to cybersecurity tend to get represented more often. So things like data security, which relates to like backing up, gets quite a lot of attention. Something around like managing incidents, what do you do if something goes wrong? Less attention towards that. In terms of completeness, well, okay, we looked at how long were they in terms of words, how many links out to other things did they provide, so you could go looking further, and the depth of guidance, which was a subjective rating, but largely you can see it sort of follows the length and the number of links. I'll just point out, bit of variation here. from just 335 words to almost 7,000 words. So depending on which source you end up looking at, you've maybe got less reading to do, but you're perhaps going to get less insight into what you need to do about it. And then in terms of clarity, well, does it define what cybersecurity is? Does it talk about what the threats are? Does it stay on topic? Does it require you to have prior knowledge of IT? Does it require you to have prior knowledge of cybersecurity to understand it? And there's a reasonable variation amongst that. At least most of them are pitched at a baseline beginner level here. But does it provide steps that you can then easily follow? And does it paint a picture of what good looks like for the issues overall? And that's where things tend to stop. And so one of the things from this is that, okay, you could read about cybersecurity from some of these guides and get a picture of what you need to do, but does it bring you any closer to being able to do it? This led us into interviewing SMEs and providers themselves to get a sense of what they felt from this sort of thing. Talking to the SMEs then, I'll put a few quotes up. And this, I think, feels typical from those that we spoke to. We would rather spend money on whatever it was for pursuing their core business than spend it on the tech stuff. Does that ring true for anybody? Hands up. Who wants to spend it on the tech stuff? Nobody? All right. I would say we've got no security protocols in place. Now, that didn't seem to be the case for many of you, because you put your hands up. And one that sort of chimes nicely for our communities of support idea, it's difficult to find peers that have a similar mindset, that you can have a conversation with them about it. That's not quite phrased right there, but that's what they said, so I've presented their words, not mine. We also talked to a number of cybersecurity advisors or providers, experts, whatever we want to call them, who deal with SMEs. So we asked them, when do SMEs come to you seeking support? And it's pretty much off the back of an incident. This is what's caused them to want to look at cybersecurity. You know, justifiably in many cases, they've got other pressures. It's more reactive. I've had an incident, or, as maybe is increasingly the case now, there is a demand for security to be evidenced by somebody else, and that's what's causing us to look at it. And not enough organisations are seeking help because they don't know where to go and they don't know what help they need. The attitude towards cybersecurity, a worryingly, very, very worryingly low level of basic cyber hygiene. So not dealing, for example, with some of those things from the NCSC's Small Business Guide. Quite often it's just a case of they want somebody to come in, get security done, and then leave, and security can be considered sorted. It doesn't work like that, unfortunately. And an apprehension, yeah, again, perhaps understandably, that having read about it, it's, looks like it's going to cost money, looks like it's going to take time, and so is it really achievable? And why anyway do we need it from a business perspective, which is perhaps the question. And opportunities to improve, realising that a one-size-fits-all thing doesn't work. It's about the content being more tailored, speaking to the audience that needs to understand it. And then a couple of quotes that again link towards this community of support idea, having some context in which people can come together and share experiences and talk about it in maybe a safe space, not competing, for example. So that links us to this bit, the communities of support. So our attempt to not replace anything, but to supplement what's already there. So, when you've got those questions, concerns, wanting advice and recommendations, not really when you've had an incident, then you need to go to the more established things like Action, Fraud, or NCSC, etc. But otherwise, perhaps going to the community and getting their voice. So a new channel, not a replacement, a basis for collaboration. And the idea being sharing experiences, being an enabler for a discussion between the peer SMEs and also an injection of cyber experts within that community, but not as an opportunity for them to be selling things. Various different opportunities for forming communities based on regional location, type of business, size, maturity, and one option being those within the supply chain of a larger organisation. What we're doing within our pilots, we're doing it based on SME size because that was the opportunity available to us. And we're hoping that the benefits will be access to this community of knowledge, impartial advice, and being able to have a dialogue, socialising this topic that many might find otherwise unapproachable. And we're supplementing it with the notion of a support broker, given that we've got geographically diverse organisations, so we can't bring them together face-to-face as much as we would like. The opportunity for them to pose the questions and seek support via this online channel. So what we've got running, and this has actually gone live within the last few weeks, 2 communities, one of micro businesses, one of small and mediums, and both of them supported by a selection of appropriately qualified cyber experts. And we're now in the process of getting those discussions going, running some sessions for them ourselves. So we're going to be, for example, scheduling something about cyber essentials, and we find that amongst our micro businesses, only a couple have it, whereas amongst the small and mediums, it's much more pronounced. Only a couple don't have it, or only one doesn't have it, so we can have a sharing of experiences there to see if others can be encouraged towards it. So in conclusion, unfortunately, the community is increasingly exposed to cyber incidents, not just the threats, the incidents are happening. The advice, the availability of it, the nature of it can vary, as can the utilisation of it. And even if you found it, you need the ability to act upon it. And so we're trying to help that with our additional channel of support. And other than that, folks, thank you very much. Contact, email, website, and if you want them, little flyers, which I shall leave over there. Thank you very much.
So really important topic, particularly around digital adoption, you know, in the sense that there's, you know, if you haven't got secure systems, then, you know, that's a disaster waiting to happen, isn't it? So,
It is, unfortunately.
Any questions from the room? Yes, Darren.
That's working. I wondered, in your communities, who from the small organisations is likely to attend? What role in the organisations do they have? Who's coming to your communities?
So we've got folks varying from the owners of the business themselves. In a couple of cases, the larger organisations, the IT person, for example, but it really does vary. But I think if I had to completely generalise, the business owner.
Okay. Any other questions?
There's one at the back there, yep.
Don't know whether that's on.
It is.
Yeah, just, I mean, you kind of had 2 communities of practice. Can you talk to me about how difficult, easy it was to create those communities and whether there were kind of challenges?
Yeah, so there certainly were challenges. I mean, I think one of the fundamentals that, well, we knew and we verified through doing the work is that the SME community part of it, the SME participants, are a hard-to-reach group. We actually have a queue that could go around the block of providers, the experts that are willing and have volunteered their time to be part of the communities. The SMEs saying, yes, we would like to be involved. We've actually had more than are now within the community. We had some that signed up that then dropped away. Our original hope, if I'm being frank and honest in a closed community, is we were hoping to have 3 pilot communities, but given that we had varying levels of response after people had initially confirmed they would take part, we've divided up slightly differently and we've ended up with 2. But I said we had much more sort of obvious engagement from the providers, shall we say, than SMEs being available to us. And we had several hundred that we surveyed as part of the earlier work, for others that we then interviewed, and we've talked to various at conferences and other events like the SME Expo earlier this year at Excel. So we've had a lot of touch points, but it's that, well, I suppose, combination of recognising an issue that they want to address and having the time and the resource to be able to put towards participating.
Yes, question over here.
Yeah, this is a very interesting topic. How can we raise the awareness?
So, the awareness of the communities or the awareness of security more generally?
Not the community, the security, because community means people follow the community then.
So basically I think there needs to be more word of mouth about why cybersecurity matters to the audience. I think having the communities there is something that people can then be referred to, along with the things that are already there. So it's not that this becomes any sort of replacement for go and look at the NCSC's website because they've got a wealth of information there. I mean, it's You know, it's very much a case of build it and they might not come at the moment with cybersecurity. It's not a shortage of information. It's a shortage perhaps of awareness of the existence of the information, the need to take action, and also that skill base to be able to help you take action. And that's one area where this can perhaps provide some support. I mean, it's not a case of somebody's going to go in and solve configure their systems, but having the advice on, well, we use this provider, we use this technology, we found this works for us, etc. That is something that could be good intelligence sharing. Yeah.
Maybe an extension to that. There are so many courses running in universities and all that. And as we all are using AI technology in every organization, why should not it be a part of the structure, the course structures?
So actually, if we look at the cyber resilience centres, they are making use of students from universities to help provide some of the support to organisations that contact them. Certainly with it, again, it varies between universities, but there are things where, in some cases, crying out for businesses to provide ideas for student projects, individuals, groups. But you're taking an uncertain resource, shall we say, with some of the students. Some are frankly going to be better than others, and they need support to do it. They're not active practitioners at that stage, they're not fully qualified, but they can perhaps provide some entry-level support. I wouldn't necessarily, at least based on my experience of asking it about things, trust what AI would tell us about it yet.
Yeah, it's kind of antidote. Yeah.
I mean, I've asked AI about me and I could believe a bit of it, and then I thought, I don't recognise this person from the rest, but it's probably nice for anyone who does know me. AI presents me better.
Okay, last question, I think.
Yeah, really interesting subject. I'm just when you looked at the different guides and there was a complete sort of no in the column around what does good look like. What are you finding in terms of how you hit that sweet spot between you could always do more from a cybersecurity point of view, you've got limited resources, different sizes of businesses. Where do you see the sweet spot in terms of bringing those different people together and trying to identify a standard to get to?
Yeah, so I think there's different sweet spots depending on the maturity level of the organisation, its cybersecurity. I think as an entry level, people in the organisation being aware of another end. I'll name check NCSC things and hope they give me some commission. Cyber aware is a thing for individuals. So if each of us knows how to practice the guidance of cyber aware, which is another 5 points around protecting devices, applying updates, and that's a good start. The small business guide to cybersecurity is a good start for an organisation. Running through the cyber action toolkit is another good thing, and that links to the small business guide. Slightly more mature would be going for Cyber Essentials itself, because that then is an external validation of some level, either that you've assessed yourself appropriately or somebody else has come in and done it and showed you've complied with Cyber Essentials Plus. But many organisations are a bit away from that, so having a more realistic target in the first instance is a good stepping stone.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Steve. That was a great introduction to the resources that are out there for small businesses and some of the problems they face. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you very much.